In the beginning, there was no list. There were no labels, no categories, and certainly no Latin names. Just a silent world of creatures running, swimming, and flying, completely unaware that they were being watched by a species with a very specific, very human obsession, naming things. The first human to name an animal didn't do it in a laboratory. They didn't have a textbook or a classification system. They probably did it with a grunt, a gesture, or a sharp sound while standing in the dirt of the African savanna about 300,000 years ago. We are language-building creatures. From the moment our ancestors developed the vocal range to differentiate between a predator and a source of food, we began the great project of taxonomy. But the story of who actually formalized this, who took the wild chaos of nature and locked it into a rigid, written system, is a story of obsession, pride, and one very busy Swedish botanist. His name was Carl Linnaeus. The year was 1735. The world of science was a mess. If you were a biologist in France and you talked about a wolf, you used a long, flowery description in Latin. If you were a biologist in England, you used a different long, flowery description. Nobody knew if they were talking about the same creature. It was a scientific Tower of Babel. Linnaeus changed everything with a single book, Systema Naturae. He didn't just name animals. He invented the filing cabinet for life. He proposed the binomial nomenclature system that we still use today. Every single living thing gets two names. The first is the genus, the family name. The second is the species, the individual name. Think of it like a mailing address for the biological world. Homo sapiens. Canis lupus. Felis catus. Linnaeus was prolific. He named thousands of species. He was also, frankly, a bit of a narcissist. When he classified the human race, he didn't just call us animals. He put us in the order of primates, right alongside apes. That was a radical, earth-shattering claim in the 18th century. He went further, subdividing humans based on what he perceived as geography and temperament, a practice that we now recognize as deeply flawed in the foundation of centuries of scientific racism. But back to the beginning. If Linnaeus gave us the system, who actually named the very first animal in that system? In his 10th edition of Systema Naturae, published in 1758, Linnaeus established the starting line for zoological nomenclature. He decided that everything before that date was just historical noise. He started his official count there. So, technically, the first animals ever named in the modern sense were the ones Linnaeus listed on page 1 of that 1758 edition. But he didn't do it all alone. He relied on the work of ancient Greek philosophers who had tried this thousands of years earlier. Consider Aristotle. Around 350 BCE, he was walking the shores of the island of Lesbos. He wasn't just observing nature, he was cataloging it. He wrote History of Animals, a monumental work where he classified creatures based on how they moved, where they lived, and what they ate. He separated animals into those with blood and those without. He had the right idea, even if his methodology was limited by the lack of a microscope. But even Aristotle wasn't the first. Go back further to Mesopotamia, to the Sumerians. Around 3000 BCE, they were carving clay tablets with lists of animals. They weren't using Latin. They were using cuneiform. They were organizing the world into groups: domesticated cattle, wild predators, birds, and fish. They weren't trying to understand evolutionary biology, they were trying to manage resources. Naming an animal is an act of power. When you name something, you define its boundaries. You decide what it is and, more importantly, what it is not. But here is the irony. While we have spent thousands of years naming every creature we can find, the vast majority of animals on this planet remain nameless. Current estimates suggest that there are somewhere between 5 and 10 million species on Earth. Scientists have formally described and named about 1.2 million of them. That means nearly 90% of the animals you might encounter in a deep forest or the bottom of the ocean are effectively invisible to science. They are waiting for a name. We are currently naming about 15,000 to 20,000 new species every year. At that rate, if we stopped discovering new ones today, it would take us centuries just to finish the paperwork for the ones we've already found. There is a strange loneliness to that. We think we own the planet because we've labeled the pieces. We act as if a creature doesn't exist until a human in a white coat writes its name in a journal. But the creature doesn't care about the name. The wolf didn't become a wolf because Linnaeus called it Canis lupus. It was a wolf for millions of years before we ever opened our mouths to label it. Naming is a bridge between the human mind and the natural world. It is our way of saying, I see you. So, who named the first animal? The first human to point at a lion and scream a sound that everyone else in the tribe understood, that person was the first taxonomist. They were the first person to impose order on the chaos of the wild. We are still that tribe. We are still pointing at things, trying to categorize them, trying to make sense of a world that is far older and far more complex than our vocabulary. We are obsessed with naming the world, perhaps because we are terrified that if we stop naming it, we might lose our place in it. The next time you see a stray cat, a bird in the park, or even a spider in the corner of your room, remember, you are participating in a tradition that started in a cave, moved through the libraries of Greece, and culminated in the obsession of an 18th century Swede. We name to understand. We name to organize. But perhaps, most importantly, we name because we are desperate to feel like we are the ones in control. But as the millions of nameless species waiting in the dark continue to evolve, eat, and exist without a single label, you have to wonder, is the act of naming them a way of preserving nature, or just a way of pinning a butterfly to a board to make us feel better about ourselves? Maybe the silence of the unnamed is the only thing that's truly honest.